right, fifth grade. Today's article is all about two important people named Harriet. And the title of the article says The Two Harriets, Heroines of Abolition. Abolition was the movement to end slavery. So if you remember at the beginning of the year when we were in class and we were learning about slavery in Kunta Kinte, these two people were very against the institution of slavery and wanted to help people like Kunta Kinte escape the realities of slavery during their day because that was an everyday struggle that they had to deal with. So, your assignment after you listen to me read this, or you read it yourself, is to list 3 facts about each Harriet. Although their names are both Harriet, they share more in common than just their name. On the left side, lists 3 things that are unique about Harriet Beecher Stowe, and then on the right side, lists 3 things that are unique about Harriet Tubman. And then you can write a summary paragraph underneath explaining how they are the same and how they are different. You are welcome to use the sentence stems. You can just erase these lines if you don't want to use that, or write over the lines, or you can just start typing and fill in your thoughts there by saying they were the same. You may not say Harriet Tubman and Harriet Beecher Stowe are the same because they're both named Harriet. I would like you to go a little bit deeper than that. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. And heroine is a female word for being a hero. So I'm going to go ahead and start here, and if you could follow along with me as I read, that would be great. It says, many people fought against slavery in the United States. They were called abolitionists because they wanted to abolish or get rid of slavery. 2 of the best-known abolitionists were both named Harriet Beecher Stowe and Harriet Tubman. So this in the beginning is going to talk about Harriet Beecher Stowe. So pay attention so you can come up with some facts to list on the left-hand side here. Harriet Beecher Stowe was the 6th of 11 children born to a minister and his wife. She was just 5 years old when her mother died. At age 13, she started going to a school founded by her sister where she learned to be a teacher and started writing. She wrote her first book at age 22. So pretty young, and she wrote her own book. About a year younger than me when she wrote her first book. In 1852, her novel, Uncle Tom's Cabin, was published. It quickly became a bestseller. Indeed, it was the most popular book in America. Although the book was fiction, and remember, fiction is not real, it was based on the lives of real people. The novel tells the story of several slaves, but its main character is Tom, a man with a wife and children. Tom is separated from his family and sold to one plantation owner after another, and Tom's a slave. The last of his owners is a cruel man named Simon Legree. Legree orders Tom to beat the other slaves on his plantation. Tom refuses, so Legree beats Tom. Legree orders his hired hands called overseers to kill Tom. While Tom dies, several of the other characters in the book escape from slavery by traveling north to Canada via what was called the Underground Railroad. The Underground Railroad was not an actual railroad, but a network of people who helped shelter and guide slaves to their freedom. Stowe's novel moved many readers and inspired them to speak out against slavery. Many plays were performed based on the novel's characters. But her book angered people in the South, and historians believe it helped lead the Southern states to break away from the North a decade later, which marked the beginning of the Civil War. Uncle Tom's Cabin was so influential that when President Abraham Lincoln met Stowe in 1862, he is supposed to have said, "So you're the little woman who wrote the book that started this great war." We're going to stop. I'd like you to pause the video and write down 3 facts about Harriet Beecher Stowe. All right, some things that I might put down about her is that she was anti-slavery. She wrote Uncle Tom's Cabin, and it was a very important book that kind of started the Civil War, which was the war to end slavery in our country. Because that is the main causes. One of the main causes of the Civil War was the ending of our slavery in our country. All right, so now we're going to learn about Harriet Tubman. So, like Harriet Beecher Stowe, Harriet Tubman was one of 11 children. So that's a way that you could say they're similar, is they both grew up in big families. Both of Harriet Tubman's parents were slaves on a plantation in Maryland. Tubman began working at 6 years old, rented out by her master as a weaver. As a teenager, she began working in the fields of the plantation. She suffered many beatings at the hands of the plantation's overseers, which caused permanent damage. Learning that the plantation owner planned to sell her and her brother, she decided to escape. Guided only by the North Star in the sky, she made her way to Pennsylvania, frequently on foot. But Tubman was not content simply to live in freedom. She became active in the Underground Railroad Harriet Beecher Stowe had written about. Just 1 year after her own escape, she returned to the South to rescue her sister and her sister's 2 children. Then she returned once again for one of her brothers. Sometime later, she returned yet again to rescue her parents. It was not just her family she helped to become free. She wanted to help other slaves to escape. She returned to the South 19 times. 19 times. That's so many times. The exact number of slaves that Tubman led to freedom is unknown. A 19th century biography stated that she rescued 300 slaves, while modern historians estimate the total was closer to 70. And it was really hard back then to get slaves out of freedom. They had slave catchers along the road, and if you were caught, you were most definitely killed, or they would chop off your hand or foot or something so you couldn't run away again. So, really interesting that she was able to do that. During the Civil War, Tubman worked for the Union Army as a nurse and a cook. She also became a spy. In one daring mission, she learned the position of the Confederate Army along the Combahee River in South Carolina and traveled on a gunboat with hundreds of Union Army soldiers as they freed about 750 slaves. Both Harriets lived fruitful lives long past the Civil War. Harriet Beecher Stowe continued to write, publishing more than 30 books. In her 80s, Harriet Tubman opened a nursing home in her adopted town of Auburn, New York, for older African Americans. Both spoke out for women's rights, but Harriet Tubman and Harriet Beecher Stowe are now recognized for their different but important roles in ending slavery in the United States. So kind of a cool, Harriet Tubman was a cool African American role model, and Harriet Beecher Stowe, and they were similar in that they both believed that slavery was wrong and evil, and that people should not be enslaved for the color of their skin. So very important people to our country, and I am excited that we got to read about them. So go ahead and write some facts about each one of them, and then include your summary as well.